and I do these, and the yes, yes, very nice, yes.
Section 1. Why it's good to not count calories. Whether you need to count calories or not will depend on a number of factors. For almost everyone, however, the answer is probably going to be no. You see, the ketogenic diet affords its practitioners one massive benefit, and that's that, for most people, counting calories is unnecessary. Counting calories is difficult. It imposes a degree of stress upon your life. Everything needs to pass over a scale. You need to be thinking about things a lot. And it can make the inertia of getting into a diet a little heavier. It can make the experience of dieting a little worse. And so wherever possible, if you are afforded the benefit of not needing to count calories, then take advantage of it. Section 2. Why don't you need to count calories on the ketogenic diet? Well, before we answer that, I'd like to take a look at popular weight management drugs that are available at present. GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic. Ozempic mimics glucagon-like peptide 1, which causes an appetite suppressant effect and helps regulate blood sugar, amongst other things. For that reason, the people who take that drug feel less hungry. That is why you lose weight on those drugs. The same is true for keto. During the ketogenic diet, your hunger dips down. Your appetite is suppressed. As a consequence, you choose to eat less food and, by virtue of that, consume less calories. Unfortunately, there isn't magic here. You lose weight because you eat less, but luckily, you feel like eating less. It isn't a pain to deprive yourself of the foods. That's why, for the most part, you don't need to count calories on the ketogenic diet. And given that counting calories can be stressful and annoying to do, you should probably take advantage of that. But what if you're not losing weight? Which brings us to section 3. If you're not losing weight, well then you're going to need to intervene and course correct. If the diet isn't naturally getting you to lose weight, you're going to need to manually induce a calorie deficit. And to do that, you need to count calories. Before we can touch on that, we need to address how you know if you're losing weight or not losing weight. Section 4. How to know if you're not losing weight. It's not as simple as measuring your weight every day and seeing if the number changed. Unfortunately, your weight is expected to fluctuate massively day on day. Now, fat loss and muscle gain, as well as fat gain, doesn't occur meaningfully in the span of one day. All of the weight fluctuations you will experience day on day, or at least almost all of them, will be accounted for by water weight and food mass, the partially undigested food that still is in your gut. That's why taking your measurement every day and using that as the single source of truth is not going to be very useful. It's very error-prone. So instead, when measuring your weight and trying to see if you're losing weight, maintaining it, or gaining it, you need to check for trends. That is to say, if your weight is trending downward or trending up, you can have a reliable assumption that the weight gain or loss is that of fat or potentially muscle if you're building muscle. So how do we establish a trend? Every day when you measure your weight, you should do so in the same circumstances. That is to say, you should do so at the same time of day. You should weigh yourself, preferably in your sleeping attire, after you've gone to the toilet in the mornings, but before you have eaten your first meal and before you've drunk any water. Once you take that measurement in the morning, you should record it in your calorie counting app or wherever you choose. Most of these apps will have a feature that represents your weight as a graph. And then it's pretty simple. Is it trending down? Week on week? Not day on day, but week on week. Is the number getting lower? Is it staying the same or relatively the same? Or is it rising up? That's a better estimate. Now, what if you're not recording on an app or your app doesn't offer you this feature? Well, pretty simple. Record your daily weight in the same circumstances, and then on, say, Sunday, once you've gotten a week's worth of measurements, total them up, so plus every single day's weight together, and divide by 7. That's your daily average weight. Look at that weight, look at your previous week's weight, average that is. Are they the same? Are they lower? Are they higher? Then you get a reasonable estimate, a pretty good guess, that your weight change is a consequence of fat or muscle, which is what we're concerned with. A quick note on the scales you use. It doesn't really matter what scale you use, so long as you use the same scale. Analog or digital, it's all good. Make sure that any error that would be introduced by a shoddy scale is nullified by the fact that you're using the same scale. We're just looking for trends here, not the exact perfect amount. Another note on bioelectrical impedance. Certain scales and devices offer a feature which sends a current through your body and, using the software within that device, gives you an approximation of your body composition, different tissues, etc. Bioelectrical impedance is prone to error, particularly when it comes to water weight fluctuations. And so I would generally just disregard it. It can be fun or a curiosity, but it's not useful in this context at all. Section 5. How to count calories. We now know what our weight is, whether it's trending down, trending up, or staying the same. So if it's trending up or staying the same, we know we need to intervene. If we're not losing weight, or potentially even gaining weight, that's when we need to count calories. So how do we count calories? The most serious, the most accurate, the most fastidious way to count calories is the following. Every single piece of food that you eat needs to be weighed and recorded. Every single thing that you consume, you will need to have an accurate picture of exactly how much of it you consumed in grams, and you need to record that in an app. That's quite extreme. Whether you do it in the most fastidious way or not, you will need to get a gram scale so that you can measure your food. If you're cooking a stew or a large meal with many different ingredients all combined together, you will need to measure every single ingredient, the exact amount that you added in, and then you will need to measure the total weight of the resultant meal. Add together the calories of all of the ingredients and divide it by the weight of the final meal, and then you have a calorie per gram number. Then, however much of that meal you eat, you now know how many calories you consumed given the grams of that meal that you ate. That's the most intense way you can do it. This way will also require you to, for instance, bring a gram scale to a restaurant, and overall, be quite a strange fellow. Is that recommended for everyone? No, it's not. It's quite difficult to do. You need to be a certain type of person to get enjoyment out of this and to be able to do it reliably. So instead, for most people, my recommendation is measure the vast majority of what you eat, and don't bother too much with counting every single ingredient that comprises a large meal, getting gram to calorie calculations of those. Instead, using the application that you use to record your calories, find the closest approximation and settle for that. But you will need to use grams. Volumetric measurements are too prone to error. Another note, what application to use? There are many. MyFitnessPal is very popular. A personal favorite of mine is Chronometer, but no matter what you use, just keep using the same one. Try find one that also has a good record of foods that you commonly eat. Section 6. How to drop your calories. You now know, at least with a good approximation, how much calories you're consuming. It's time to intervene. How much calories do you need to drop in order to course correct yourself to start losing weight? A common recommendation is going to be about 500 calories per day. This will equate to a weight loss of around a pound, or half a kg of weight per week. That's very maintainable, and that's very common as far as recommendations go. And it's not bad. Figure out what your maintenance calories are. The best way to do that is to measure how much you're eating and track your weight concurrently. And if your weight is plateaued, not changing, and you know how much you're eating on average, then you know what your maintenance is. If you haven't established that yet, there are plenty of online calculators that will give you a best guess, a good starting point, an approximation of what your maintenance calories are going to be. Use that calculator, figure out what your maintenance best guess is, and from that number, remove 500 calories. That is a good starting point. If you are quite overweight, you may consider removing more than that. You may consider removing even up to 1,000 calories. Past 1,000 calorie deficit per day, things get a little touch and go, and I probably wouldn't recommend most do that. But remove 500 and check your weight loss. If you begin to lose weight at a pace that you're happy with, then stick to it. Monitor. Should you start to plateau again, remove more. Removals past the first 500 shouldn't be done in 500 increments for the most part. Try 200, 300, and then 400 extra. So go from 500 calories. Are you losing weight? Maybe not as much as you would want. Maybe drop it down to 600 deficit, 700 deficit. Still not enough. Okay, drop it down to 900. Finally, drop it down to 1,000. Section 8. Section 8. Section 8. Summary. Summary judgment. This Section 8, scrap it from the books. It's gone. Section 8. Particular people. It might be the case that you have certain specific weight goals in mind. If you have aspirations for very low body fat, we're talking somewhere close to 10% or even below for men, and something around 20% and lower for women, then the ketogenic diet's natural hunger suppressive effects are not going to be sufficient for you. Once you get very lean, you are naturally going to feel very hungry, and that will supersede the natural suppressive effects of keto. As a consequence, if you have aspirations for very low body fat percentages, you're going to need to get on top of your calories and get on top of your calories as soon as you start to get reasonably lean. That's an inevitability, so maybe practice it earlier on. Other things to note. Your natural hunger might decrease, and as a consequence, you would slowly start losing weight. However, if you have specific weight goals that you need to meet, you're going to need to count your calories and be serious about it. If you need to lose 3 kilograms in the span of 3 weeks, you will have to drop your calories by 1,000. So, just a special note, if you have particular goals, you're going to need to be particular from the beginning. Section 9, a summary. The ketogenic diet affords you one massive benefit, and that is that you can be less fastidious about your diet. You can choose to eat foods and let your natural hunger guide you. If that's not working out, because again, you're measuring yourself every day and you can see you're not losing weight, well then you're going to need to intervene. You can do so in a manner that is less cumbersome upon your life. You don't need to be counting absolutely everything, but you should be counting the vast majority of the things you eat, and doing so in a manner that is as accurate as is reasonable, without getting too crazy about it. And start by dropping 500 calories if you find yourself not losing weight, and should that still not be enough, continue dropping more and more. That about summarizes counting calories on the ketogenic diet. The final takeaway is, don't do it if you don't have to. I'm standing right, this is right, I'm standing
good.
out here.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to talk like this,
This, yes.
and then the microphone needs to hear me talking like this.
Yes.
Okay, very good. The waveform is not very high, but I see that it is still getting pretty good on the...
The waveform is usually small on this microphone,
It's
but
very small
very
waveform.
sexy, nice sounding.
Then I think we should probably good.
Okay.
Okay, let me check.
Here on this channel, I cover topics and interesting bits of information about the ketogenic diet, guides and information that helps me and others in my life do the diet. If you are interested in the diet as well, stick around. There's plenty to learn, lots to see. And if you have any considerations, questions, or further information, please leave it down below. We'll read it.